it's just building it holistically. Oh, okay, problems will always come. Lesson number one, this is going to happen, right? But then, okay, which one of our superpowers, which one of our values or virtues do we need to access at specific times? And I think that's such an interesting thing to think about when we regard like childhood development, because we look at math, English, and science, but look at the human, man. Look at the human in terms of what the human needs to exist in the world. Really, what do they need? And then upon that, we can create a stable environment about, okay, now the human needs to be having a job. It's like, okay, cool, job. Like job at a certain age, but pre that, could there be a curriculum based around these metrics?
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
fully.
Yeah.
I think, I think one of the this is why play is so important. It's even really important for us as adults, right? Because from a bunch of research like which has been done is like if I make something a bit more playful for you to learn in terms of your body movement, then you're gonna get it better than if it's heavily like there's that balance between structure and play. But if it's like too heavily structured, then you're you don't get the you don't get the benefit of play. And play has a lot of benefit because when you introduce that kind of like novelty, your brain adapts a hell of a lot more quickly to the task at hand. So a good one I like to use, for example, is like if somebody's doing like single leg exercises, or just essentially just trying to improve their balance. One of the things I can do is like use yoga block, place a couple of yoga blocks one in front of the other. Is like, okay, you got one foot on one yoga block, you put the other foot on the other yoga block, then you got to remove the yoga block that's left behind you now, put it in front, then you got to step. So what somebody is doing is learning to build balance without thinking about just doing a hip hinge or just doing a balance exercise. And then on top of that is kind of introduce some structure with that as well, right? Just let them play with it, figure it out as you by yourself, and then any discrepancies in quality of movement that I see, I'm going to improve your improve your execution of that. And then people just kind of like, I learned something, I did something I didn't think I could do, and I feel better for it. Not because it's the play aspect of it, but also because I've challenged myself, I've challenged my body, and I feel good for having done that. And with kids, play is super relevant to the extent that it's where they learn how to socialize properly with each other. So they learn the rules of engagement as well. So one thing that kids are always doing is by playing, they're making rules up as they go along. So even if it's outlandish, even if it's wild, it's happening automatically. So they're learning that for there to be a game where everybody can play fairly, they've got to have some rules for it, right? And then the ones they kind of figure it out themselves, and they learn that if I break these rules, then I'm going to be cast out. I'm not going to be allowed to play the game, and I don't want to be that kid. And so there's a lot of that social interaction that's going on, and play fighting is something that more and more nowadays is getting looked at as a negative thing. Is that they're trying to beat it out of, like they're saying like, fucking toxic masculinity. Don't get me started about that stuff, but toxic masculinity. We need boys to not be boys, and we need to stop them from fighting with each other because it's toxic behavior. It's like, you don't realize how important it is to be able to do that in a controlled environment. Yeah. And that controlled environment is when you have an adult around, when you have a parent around to watch what's going on, right? Because again, there's lots of things that's going on, but there's the expression, there's being physical. When you are being physical in that sense, you build this level of confidence in yourself that you can't get in any other way. You know it. I know it. Is that when I'm practicing fighting, there's something that is tapping into a part of me which I can't get from doing strength training or doing whatever. Like that, it's a different level of confidence that comes from knowing that you can handle yourself. Then there's and then the other things around it are again rules of engagement. You're learning how far you can take things. And then the role of the parent is to make sure that basically if the kid's taken it too far, they know they've taken it too far, and they're appropriately punished for that or appropriately treated for that. But I think it's detriment to young kids growing up if they're getting told not to fight with each other or not to play fight with each other. They have to learn those rules the hard way, and also because words mean very little to kids, in the sense that I could explain a word, I could explain what it means, and they can start to develop the concept for that, but they have to experience the concept of it. So you can tell somebody all you want, you can tell a child all you want that that was I'm just trying to think of like an example maybe, but it almost in a way is like, it doesn't matter how many times if I explain to a child, here is a behavior and this behavior is bad, but they're not going to know until they've actually done that behavior, and then there's the corresponding consequence for that, right?
Yep.
So it's basically learning by trial and the consequences of the actions that they've taken, because that is the realest way that they get learned. They learn what's going on. It's just that motor output. They get the sensory feedback from that output, and they realize whether it's good or bad, and they do more of it if they realize it's good. They do less of it if they realize it's bad. So, and where play fighting comes into it is again just like rules of engagement, healthful aggression release. It's physical, it's play, and they'll learn very, very quickly what's right and what's wrong. And then when you have that, it is correlated with proper expression of aggression as well. So kids who don't tend to have that ability to release that aggression, and are told that just play fighting is bad, they're a lot more warped in, well, again, on average, they're more warped in the way they express aggression as teenagers and adults. Whereas if you actually have that ability to play fight with one another, then you have a better sense of how to engage with people as you grow older.
That's, man, that segment was like talking about me with that, bro. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So interesting.
What's your experience?
So interesting. Oh, I don't even know when to jump in, bro.
Yeah. So you vibed with that in your own experience.
Yeah, I did. A lot of vibes. Yeah, man. I think I'm going to touch on my experience in a second, but I'm going to try and kind of pull on this thread, because you talked about like the difference between play and structure there, like having too much structure as a child, and the benefits in some ways, but also the negatives of that. But then the over exuberance of play, and then the understimulation of play, I suppose we could put it like that, like playing too much and too aggressively, or kind of letting your emotions kind of take you, being led by your emotion in that playful setting, and maybe kind of getting a bit too aggressive, or not playing at all and not expressing anything through like your emotion, you know what I mean? So you're not even kind of being playful. And it made me think, it's the thought it pulled out of my head is like, when we look at like tribal culture, is almost like you hear about these like rites of passage, and there is certain like, okay, we're going to go out into the jungle here, or we're going to kind of hunt for this, or this is going to be your path, you know what I mean? We're going to expose you to the elements, we're going to expose you to all the things that you need to deal with to travel forward. But what we seem to almost be doing is just, no, let's subdue that, and then when the man goes into the world, he's ill-equipped, and then especially with men, I feel like this is going to be a bit of a stab in the dark, but in a world where I feel like women are really finding their voice, and rightly so, men are almost finding absence in a way. There isn't a balance of a male masculine presence that sometimes can be completely balanced in nature, not be too hype, not be too submissive, just the middle ground, because potentially where we've come from is a place of the sword or the fist. But now it's like, okay, well, we need to be here, but how do we be here? How do we kind of conduct ourselves? And do we go too far the wrong way? You know what I mean? That's the dialogue that I'm kind of trying to unpick with what you're talking about. And I think when the way you related it back to being playful and having too much structure versus not having enough structure, yeah, it's so interesting, man. It's so interesting. And I can say from have I written anything else down? Yeah, no, that was it. But from my own experience, like, surprise, surprise, I was a bigger kid, right? Having that kind of gift and burden from a young age is really interesting now I look back, because I was always aware that even if I did, like, if I just put my hand up and I just dropped it on my thigh, like, this is a heavy hand. Like, I didn't do it. I didn't do anything to have this, but I've just got given this hand. Like, and I need to now know what to do with it. And my mum would say this to me in Punjabi a lot when I was younger. "Haath tere bahut bhare ne." Like, your hands are very heavy, right? And that doesn't mean anything to a child. Like you said, it doesn't mean anything to a child until you have a play fight with your sister, and now she's like got a bloody nose, and you're like, oh shit, what do I need to do? I need to run, I need to hide somewhere because this is about to go really bad for me, right? So that's how you learn that. Oh fuck, like I need to know what to do with this. And obviously you don't ever intend, because as a child you're just like, hit you hit me, right? And at a certain age, that the balance there shifts, because you have a sister who's like 3 years older than you, and all of a sudden she can't say shit because you could just hit her back, right? Like, that's that's the experience I've had there. But what you're talking about with regards to dumbing that down, or just kind of trying to suppress that, that's so interesting, because my experience with that was, no, like, don't do that, because you're going to hurt somebody. And I mean, I took this to the wrong extremes. Like, I could tell you stories about that. I think we've touched on in the past. Like me, I was just, I don't know whether it was aggression. It wasn't aggression. It was playfulness, because I would fight with my dad when he would come home. That was my version of Khabib and his bear, right? My dad was my real bear, right? Thankfully, he was like, he had conscience and he had kind of understanding. But I would get pinned underneath him. Man. Yeah, man, 100%. And you know, I attribute that to how I feel nowadays when it comes to weight training, or when it comes to wrestling with Silvio, is that there's a certain level of, no, I'm not going to try. I'm not going to quit. Like, even if you tap me out or whatever, I've got to get up and I've got to try again. I've got to try again, because I had some of that when I was younger. I didn't have a lot of it, but I had some of it, and that came in the form of this 23, 24 stone man laying on you, and I'm a child, and just being like, you can't do shit, mate. Like, scream and crackle all you want, but in that moment is where you start to develop. I can't go now. Like, I'm not gonna tap out here. I'm gonna just cry my eyes out, because that's what would happen quite often. But it's just me trying. That's my version of extreme effort, right? Is to just rage out. But then you can't, like, sometimes you're told not to do that with your own kids your own age, and then there's a bit of a disconnect there. So play turns into, ooh, I can play, but then, or if you want to play like that, then we can't play like that. Like, I know I can't play like that with you. And I remember from a very young age being in primary school and actually freaking out because, oh shit, like, I really want to hit you right now, but I can't hit you because you don't understand. Like, this genuinely, like,
you don't understand what this is.
It's not like, that wasn't even ego. That was just genuine, like, oh man, you're pissing me off, and you're definitely in the wrong, but I just like, no, this is conflicting me right now at this age, you know what I mean? But at that age, what would have been ideal here's a dojo. Go to martial arts, let them teach you how to channel this with technique and peace and understanding. And basically, martial arts is a metaphor for a curriculum for dealing with the emotions that can be kind of all over the place. You know what I mean? In the right settings. Obviously, there is bad versions of, don't go to Cobra Kai, because they'll teach you how to be a bad kid.